Hello guys, welcome to Photoshop tutorials. Subscribe to our channel for regular updates. The source files are given as a link in the description below. Now let's get into the tutorial. Select the background layer and click on Ctrl+Command+J to duplicate a layer. Now click on Ctrl+Command+Shift+A to open Camera Raw, so we have to perform some basic exposure adjustments. The main thing you have to do in Camera Raw is to cut the shadows and decrease the highlights to bring down all the overexposed areas. I'm decreasing the exposure a bit since the skin is exposed. The main objective of adjusting the basic settings is to make the picture look like an even light portrait. Moving on to detail. Increase sharpening amount to 50 points and noise reduction, luminance to 20 points. Okay, this is fine. Moving on to HSL adjustments. Here you can find 3 tabs: Hues, Saturation, Luminance. By adjusting the hues, you can see the color changes happening on the subject or in the background. This is done just to pop up the background colors mostly. In saturation, you can increase the vibrance of every single color in this picture. By adjusting the luminance, you can darken or lighten the color available in the picture. Next, moving on to split toning. Slightly adjusting the colors. Okay, this is fine. Moving on to calibration to make the picture more vibrant. Okay, this is fine. Hit on OK once you're done. Let's clean up the skin by removing the dark spots and hair from the skin. Open a new layer. Click on the healing brush, choose layer sample as current and below. Now start healing. Select both the layers and click on Ctrl+Command+D to merge the layers. Let's patch the white area using a clone stamp tool. This is fine. Now, we're gonna perform frequency separation technique. This technique makes the skin smooth without losing its texture. Okay, let's get into it. Select the top layer and click on Ctrl+Command+J 2 times, so we need 2 copy layers for this technique. Name one layer as blur and another one as texture. Keep the texture layer on top and blur layer below that. Off the texture layer. Click on blur layer, go to filter. Blur. Gaussian blur. 10 points of blur recommended approximately. See that you blur the texture of the skin. Hit on OK once you're done. Now switch on the texture layer by clicking on the eye icon and select the texture layer. Go to Image. Apply Image. On the dialog box, select the layer as blur. Channel RGB as default. Turn the blending mode to subtract. Opacity 100%, scale 2. Offset 128. Please see that these settings are same as mine. This is like a kind of a formula. Hit on OK once you're done. Turn the gray layer blending mode to linear light. Click on blur layer. We are about to brush on blur layer. Right-click on the brush tool and select mixer brush. Keep the brush settings as same as mine. Start brushing gently on the skin. If overdone, the picture might look odd, so see that you brush smoothly. Okay, this is fine. The skin might look flat now, don't worry about that, we can correct that by dodging and burning. We have completed the frequency separation technique. Select the texture layer and the blur layer. Click on Ctrl G. To group both the layers, I'm naming the group as frequency separation. Now select the group and click on Ctrl or Command J to duplicate the group. Now click on Ctrl or Command E to merge the group. By doing this, we do always have a copy of what we did. Let's tone up the skin. Open a new selective colors adjustment layer. Adjusting the reds and yellows to tone up the skin. And click on Ctrl or Command I to invert the layer mask and brush out the subject. Let's tone up the background. Open a new selective colors adjustment layer. Adjusting the yellows and greens. Okay, this is fine. Let's make the background look like it's blurred. But we're not gonna blur the background. This is a kind of a trick which makes your subject to look like it's sharper. We are gonna brush the background basically. Now let's get into it. Open a new layer. Select the brush tool. Brush settings opacity 100% and flow 5% approximately. Click on I to switch to eyedropper tool. Select the color behind the subject and start brushing gently. As you brush, switch to eyedropper tool to select the source color. Okay, this is fine. Open a layer mask and brush out the subject from it. Okay, we're done. Now let's do some local dodge and burn. Open a new layer, click on Shift F5. On the dialog box select Contents option and click on 50% gray, blending mode normal and opacity 100%. Hit on OK. Turn the gray layer blending mode to soft light. Select the brush tool, masking colors black and white. Brush setting opacity 100%, flow 1% or changeable accordingly. Now select white and start dodging the subject. Only highlight the areas where you see lights on the subject. Once you're done with the dodge, select black and start burning. Burn only the areas where you see shadows. A tip for the beginners. If you're in the starting stage of learning to dodge and burn, you can use 2 gray layers, one for dodge and one for burn. If you're a pro, then you can go with a single layer. See that you cover all the areas in a subject. The more time you take, the more effective output you will get. Okay, let me speed up this process. Okay guys, we are done with the local dodge and burn. Let's boost the green on grapes. Open a new selective colors adjustment layer. Selecting neutrals and adjusting colors. Okay, this is fine. Let's layer mask the color. Okay, we're done. Let's add some blush to the subject. Open a new layer and change the blending mode to soft light. Select the brush tool and choose red color from the color palette. Brush setting, opacity 100%, flow 1% or changeable accordingly. Start brushing on the nose and on the cheeks gently. If overdone, decrease the opacity to look natural. Let's whiten the teeth. Open a new hues adjustment layer. Decrease the saturation as needed. Click on Controller Command I to invert the layer mask and brush out the teeth of the subject. If overdone, decrease the opacity to look natural. Let's boost up the eye colors. Opening a new levels adjustment layer. And let's play with the colors. Okay, this is fine, let's layer mask it. Click on Controller Command I to invert the layer mask and start brushing the eyes. See that the pupil remains black. Now let's move on to separation of the subject from the background. Open a new level adjustment layer, increase shadows a bit. Now select the brush tool and start brushing out the subject from the dark using a layer mask. Okay, we are done with this step. Now let's do some global dodge and burn. This effect will create more depth on the subject. Open a new curves adjustment layer and pull the curve down a bit to increase the shadows. Click on Controller Command I to invert the layer mask. Select the brush tool, brush setting, opacity 100%, flow 1% or changeable accordingly. And start burning the subject. Burn only the areas where you see shadows on the subject. Once you're done, open a new curves adjustment layer and pull the curve up a bit to increase highlights. Click on Controller Command I to invert the layer mask. Select the brush tool. Brush setting, opacity 100%, flow 1% or changeable accordingly. Start dodging the subject. Dodge only the areas where you see highlights on the subject. Okay, we've come to the end of global dodge and burn. Let's move on to the final image tone boosting process. Select the topmost layer and click on Controller Command, Shift, Alt, E to merge all the below layers to form a new layer. Now click on Controller Command, Shift A to open Camera Raw. Let's now boost up the image using Camera Raw. The final color grading plays a major role of fine-tuning a picture. Most of the professionals will bring up their personal touch using this final tuning process. Okay, now let's get into it. Adjusting the basic settings to see whether this will bring up something better. Moving on to curves to brighten the highlights and increasing the shadows to form a depth. Let's go to split toning, which creates the final tone of the image. I'm looking for a reddish green color. Okay, this is fine for me. Moving on to calibration to make the picture more vibrant. Okay, this is fine. Hit on OK once you're done. We've come to the end of this tutorial. If you have any doubts, you can ask them on the comments section below. Hope this tutorial was useful. Hit on the like button if you like this video, subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon for regular updates. Follow us on Instagram, link given in the description below.